Welcome to our pod. And by that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. And right now it is a new book series because it's
New
episode
news.
1 of
Just like the
season 5. New news.
New news. I'm Jason Kelsey.
Gosh.
Do you ever see clips of their podcast where they do that?
Not, so I honestly had no idea what you were talking about.
I've creeped on Travis Kelsey and Jason Kelsey too much. Apparently, we're now like clips of their podcast appear in my Instagram feeds. So apparently, whenever they like start one section of their podcast, they have like a news section and they just yell new news.
Oh, good.
So that's why I was yelling that.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, they're kind of charming men.
Well, you loved
like
their documentary, so
I did. I like Jason Kelsey a lot.
Yeah.
I was hoping that his team would win the Super Bowl, but it's not looking like it.
No.
Oh well.
No.
A dream deferred.
Well, after it is the Kelsey podcast where we talk about the Kelseys.
Yes.
Yes. No, we're starting a new season, guys. Season 5. The miniseries' name is TBD, but today we're saying we're being mesmerized by Legendborn because there's a lot of mesmering in these books so far. And we're starting on the first third of the plot, so like the first 20 chapters or 19 chapters, wherever we stop. And Hannah says, I haven't read past this chapter, so we're stopping here.
Yeah, because I texted you and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm only through chapter 25, so we can only do through part 2 because I cannot handle any spoilers. Because I'm like, this is kind of a quick read, and if Hannah has read farther than me, I'm not gonna be able to handle a spoiler.
And Hannah was playing Legends of Zelda. So.
Okay. Thank you, Zelda.
Thank you, Zelda. Thank you, Link, for making me save Hyrule. And
I have no idea what that means, but thanks.
Yeah, you've never played any Zelda game. Like I grew up with the Zelda games on like my Game Boy Advance. So like I knew the premise. I think like it took me forever because I don't read in games famously. I don't want to read a bunch of storylines. And in this specific game, I'm playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, something you didn't ask about, but like they have a bunch of video, like flashbacks to what's happened to Zelda. Because the whole premise
so it
is
just like pops up with like a paragraph at the top, and you have to read through all of it or like click through.
Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to like talk to people. But like, okay, so the whole premise of Zelda, guys, would be my reading, watching, and enjoying like portion of things. But like, Zelda is the like princess of Hyrule, and she goes missing, and like her knight has to save her. Like that's the entire premise. So like,
and Link is like the blonde.
Link is
in the green outfit.
Yeah, he's the knight. And so in this one, she like disappears, and we don't like. Sometimes she's trapped. Sometimes waste has laid foot everywhere. And in this one, she's trapped. But you have to like go into these videos of like what's happening to her wherever she is. And anytime a video came on the screen, I was like, I'm going to leave the room for a while because you can't like skip through it. You have to like watch
How
it.
How long
like,
are the videos?
They could be like 2 to 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm not here to watch a video. I'm here to play a video game. Like, I don't really care what
It's
happened.
Like a commercial break, practically.
Yeah. And so I would
bathroom
just
real quick.
leave the room. And my roommate would just be like, Hannah, I love that you just objectively will not watch these. Like she's like, you will just like get up and walk out. And I was like, I'm not here to learn things. I'm here to like do what I'm supposed to do. And
my question though is like, is it critical to the game that you know some of this information?
So yes, so I often cheat and I look it up and I'll read it online. So the video is not so much, but sometimes it is critical to read. And I famously like wouldn't read. And at one point they were like, yeah, if you make peppers in something, it'll like make you heat resistant. And I kept being like, I keep eating peppers. Why aren't they heat resistant? And my roommate finally was like, Hannah, you have to cook them. Like I cannot watch you struggle through this anymore.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just like, I didn't want to read. So I was like, I'll figure it out. It's fine. I would rather look something up and read it off of an internet website than like read dialogue between two characters. I don't know what it is, but like sometimes they just add too much. And I'm like, I don't actually care. I just want to know what I'm supposed to do.
I don't blame you, because especially if it's like 5 minutes at a time for some of these videos, that's a little too long. And it's just like, do we need this much background info? Just tell me like, hey, cook these peppers real quick, and then you can move on to this.
The pepper stuff, usually it's the dialogue that's important, where like Link starts talking to people. But like in this specific one, people are like, have you seen the princess? And then Link will like he doesn't tell them like in the dialogue, but he stops and like tells them moving his arm, like where you don't have to listen. And then they're
Mhm.
like, that's what happened to her. And I'm like, this is why I don't read these things because he's told
Yeah.
50 people now what happened to Princess Zelda and how she disappeared. And so, no, I don't care. Like, it just, yeah. So there's certain things about it that I'm like, I'm not going to read this, but I am going to play
Yeah.
for 111 hours of my time and then be like, I
Oh.
could have been reading. And then feel bad about myself because I only read 125 books when originally my goal was 130 books in the year of
Only read
2023. So
125.
I
Holy
know.
cow. What a fail.
What a fail, Laura. But so that is
What a
Hyrule is the
fail.
kingdom I'm trying to save. But what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Okay, so first I just want to share a story. So like my family had a so my mom's side of the family got together for Christmas and it was delayed because people were sick and everything.
Mhm.
So we waited till everybody was testing negative for COVID.
Yep.
Then we all got together to be safe. And so it was really good to see everybody, but I was chatting with my cousin's little girl who is 4 and she's very much like one of those little kids that kind of acts like a 20-year-old, if you know what I mean, where
Oh
it's
yeah.
like she thinks she's kind of like cool and that she's like kind of mature and can hang out with the big kids type thing. But like in our family, we don't have that, like, we don't have any like children or teenagers at this
Hmm.
point.
Yeah.
It's like my cousins and we are in our 20s and 30s. And so it's their kids that are like the next generation. And there's currently a 4-year-old and a baby.
Right.
So she doesn't have like any little kids to play with. And so she has somehow, like, this 4-year-old has somehow always seemed to gravitate to me at our get-togethers. And I think it's because I'm like, I when I talk to kids, I don't talk down to little kids. I kind of
Right.
just talk as I would talk to you. And so I'm very much direct with her and like I'll kind of talk about her interests because I also like Disney and stuff like that too. And so we were chatting and I was like, "Oh, like what movies have you watched recently?" And she was telling me that she watched the new Trolls movie and that she really likes Encanto still. That's still kind of her favorite. And I said, "Oh, like which characters do you like from Encanto?" And she said, "Probably still Luisa. She's still kind of my favorite." And she almost like talks like a Valley girl a little bit, which is
Of
hilarious to me
course. Yeah.
as a 4-year-old. She's really smart too because she knows all these different colors and she can spell a lot and everything. But anyways, so she's like, yeah, probably Louisa or not Louisa, probably Isabella is my
Oh yeah.
favorite. And I said, oh well, I like Louisa because she's strong. And I said,
She's
and
the
she has
strong one.
donkeys.
She's not nervous.
And I said, I have a donkey. So, we kind of have a little bit in common because we both have donkeys. And she gave me a look and she, yeah, you don't look very strong. No offense. So I said, "Hey, I'm surprising." I said, "I'm a wiry person. Like I'm skinny, but I'm strong." And she's like, "Sure." And
Oh my
so
gosh.
then we were chatting a little bit more, and uh, I said something about, "Ooh, that's one of my favorite things to eat," because I was trying to convince her to try some vegetables instead of like
Hmm.
continually eating like chocolate cake and stuff like that.
Right.
And she she was like, I don't really like that." And I said, "Well, what do you like to eat?" And she said, pretty much pasta is my favorite. And I said, ooh, pasta. I like pasta too. What kind of pasta do you like the best? And she says, mm, elbow noodles. I said, elbow noodles. Oh, how do you eat the elbow noodles? And she says, with Velveeta. Duh. So she basically telling me she just likes macaroni
Mac
and
and
cheese.
cheese. Yeah.
But the way that she, like, this whole conversation, she was so serious and very much like, I'm mature and kind of like giving me a look like, yeah, I don't think you know what you're
Okay.
talking about.
Fine.
Made me
Whatever.
laugh so much. I really enjoyed that whole conversation. It was hilarious. And then she brought me her leap pad that she wanted
Oh.
me to play with her for a little while.
Oh.
So it's it was like probably the most whiplash moment in that I
Right.
could have had in the entire week, where it was like this little 4-year-old who was adorable wearing a little mushroom sweater,
Oh.
right, telling me about the trolls and Encanto and that her favorite food is elbow noodles.
mac and
Velveeta.
cheese. You're just like, this is
But in
amazing.
the most mature way you possibly can if you're four. And I really enjoyed that conversation. So that was one of the things I enjoyed recently. But another thing that I've been enjoying recently, there's this little show on Netflix called Blue Eye Samurai. Hannah, have you
Okay.
watched it?
No, I have not.
Oh my gosh, it's phenomenal. So it's an animated TV series, and the the premise of it is that it takes place during the 17th century, during
Okay.
a time when Japan's borders were closed by the shogunate, and white people were not allowed to be in Japan.
Okay.
And there were four white men who remained in Japan illegally during this time. And
Mm.
one of them, we don't know who, ended up being the father of the main character of Blue Eye Samurai, Mizu. And Mizu grows up being the subject of hate because Mizu is mixed race and has a
Mm.
very traumatic upbringing and life, and basically trains extremely hard to become a samurai in order to enact vengeance against these white men who could
Okay.
possibly be her father.
Yeah.
You know, this show is beautiful to watch. It's extremely traumatic, but the way that it handles trauma and race and relationships is so well done. One of the episodes in particular was very haunting because it was like a tale of, it was like an old tale that they were showing with puppets, and
Mm.
then also like mirroring it with the main character Mizu's story
Okay.
and how they were similar to each other. That was a beautiful and haunting episode. I have loved all of this show so much. And I will say that there's a lot of violence and obviously very traumatic things that are happening within the show.
Hmm.
So if you're not in the right headspace, don't watch
Yeah.
this. But so well done. A lot of actors that we would recognize that are voicing the cast. George Takei, Brenda Song,
Hmm.
Randall Park, Kenneth Branagh. Let's see, Maya Erskine. I don't know Maya Erskine, but she was in Pen 15.
Okay. Yeah. I recognize.
Um,
I think I know who you're talking about.
so and then Darren Barnett, who was in Never Have I Ever, is one of the
Yes.
voices too.
Oh, fun.
So like really cool cast. Yeah, I think Ming-Na Wen is in this too.
Okay.
So yeah, Ming-Na Wen is in this. Harry Shum Jr. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But this show is phenomenal, and it was one of those things like usually when I watch TV, I have a bad habit of like scrolling at the same time on my phone.
Right.
And this one I could not look away from the TV. I was just like locked in. It was so captivating. I
Yeah.
highly recommend if you like action, if you like kind of like historically based fiction, and if you really enjoy like I'm trying to think what the like samurai stories are, what their genre is. I'm not for sure, but I know that I've seen other movies and
Right.
stuff with samurai stories. But yeah, just really, really, really good show. Like this, if I would have watched this earlier when it came out, I would have easily included this in like favorites of 2023.
Oh,
But
good.
yeah, such a good show. Highly recommend. And
Good.
then
That's
another
awesome.
thing that I mentioned in our favorites episode, but I haven't talked about it at all, was I read Monstress Volume
Hmm.
8,
Yeah.
Inferno. Oh my gosh, I loved it. So I love this series, and
Yeah.
I've been rereading each volume when the new one comes out just to like refresh myself.
Hmm.
And last year when I did my reread, my Instagram bestie Jones in the Books did the reread with me. This time he did not. And when we got to volume 8, I was prepared because I knew what had happened all the way up to the events in volume 8. And it was actually really helpful to have all of that information because
Right.
taking a year off was not helpful to Jones in the Books. And he was like asking me, like, wait, what happened here? I don't really remember. So it was very helpful to have that look back and be able to go into this knowing, like, oh, yeah, we left off here and this is where Micah is and this is what happened and this is what we know. I I think that we've gotten to the point by volume 8 that things have become convoluted enough that you kind of need to do a reread if you're
Yeah,
unless you're like mega mind and can remember all these things. But
fair enough.
I definitely I definitely think people should pick up this series again if they're able to handle the violence and the trauma of it all. If not, take a break.
Right.
But yeah, I just think that we've reached a point where it's definitely becoming more fantastical than it has before, and now we're kind of bridging into different dimensions even, which was
Oh,
extremely interesting.
yeah.
Extremely interesting. And it's really cool to see Micah at this point in the story assessing like where she is at and how far she has come and where she wants to go within
Right.
her own journey and how she's going to move forward with Zin. And I just really loved all of the things that were kind of coming together in this, even though it was kind of a big step from
Right.
what had been happening in the last volume. You can see the
Interesting.
things that are building up as you read along, especially when I was like reading along this time. I was like, okay, yeah, I noticed that happened in this volume. I noticed that happened in this volume, but it's almost like breadcrumbs. And then it was just like a huge step to volume 8, it seemed like. So if you were to just like jump into volume 8
You would
after not
just
reading
be
the other ones for a year, I can see how it would
right.
be confused. But I suppose the people that are reading them in issues, it's not much of a problem. But
Right.
for me, when I'm only getting one volume per year, I got to do the rereads. But I really enjoyed volume 8. All of these books have been like 5 stars, so
I know. I do
no
love this
change there.
series. It's a very good series. And Laura is our resident like, and as for people who haven't read this graphic novel series, it's super interesting. Laura and I both have read this one, so it's like kind of shorthand for us. But it's one you really have to read yourself because the world building in it is so complicated. Like, if I started trying to explain everything that happens, I would be spoiling a bunch of reveals because,
Yeah.
like, the first issue kind of, and we've done an episode on this with Friends Talking
Friends Talking
Fantasy
Fantasy, because
of
they
Volume One.
introduced us to this.
Yes. And so definitely go check out that if you're interested in learning more about the series with minor spoilers. But like
Major spoilers
major spoilers. Sorry,
for volume 1. Yeah.
we do the entire breakdown of volume one, but like the series overall is just so well done. It's so interesting, and like to
Mhm.
see very complicated characters kind of doing like crappy things to each other throughout time, and like just it's very fascinating. Heavy on the world building, heavy on like the artwork on it is gorgeous. It's
Yeah,
stunning.
that's my
Like
favorite thing about the whole entire series is honestly Sana Takeda's art. Like, oh.
yeah, and so I
And
would
I
say
can't
like
imagine the work and the partnership that goes into play there for them to craft this story and build the art into it. Like, oh my gosh, the time.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. And the art, like Laura's right, the artwork and it's just hands down amazing. So if you ever want to like do a deep dive into graphic novels and you're interested in something that's like a little bit more confusing, I would say like my biggest thing, Laura's done a reread of these. I kind of always get confused until I do a reread because I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm having a great time. And I'm the
Yeah,
first to
I
admit,
very much want to know the lore though of things and like kind of understand where I was at. And I don't like to just, especially after like a year when they're coming out like once a year with a new
mhm,
volume, I kind of want to do the reread so I can jump in knowing what's going on. And I'm less about the like, oh, let's go along for the ride, especially if it's like a ride that's gonna really confuse me.
right. That's
And that would
very
have definitely
fair.
happened this time. So, did you
Um,
read Volume 8 yet?
I don't remember.
You haven't read Volume 8? It just came out this
I
year. It came out in
I
November.
know. I have no idea if I've read it. I'm sure that's the thing is these books like kind of all blend. I don't know one from the
You
other.
don't have it marked on Goodreads, so I was
I
gonna say
oh,
no.
okay. I haven't then. Like if I don't have it marked, I have not read it. So
Okay.
um no, I
Because I
haven't
only
read
have
it
two
yet.
friends on Goodreads, so
It's really easy for Laura
it's
to
it's easy
find
for me to
me.
be like, oh, who of my friends have read this book?
Um, so yeah, it looks like I mean they have like covers for a ton of these, even though only volume eight is out. Yeah, I haven't read volume eight yet. Although some of these I've read a ton of these and none of them are
Well, it's
marked.
confusing on Goodreads because they not only have like the different editions that are like one is paperback and one is edition or whatever, but they also have it broken down by issue.
Oh, that's the
So you have to
problem.
make sure that it's like volume. 8 or
Yeah.
volume 1. So like
But
volume 8 contains issues 42 through
42 to
48.
47. Okay. I have not read 8 yet, but I need to. But yeah. So I'm glad you're enjoying those. I'm glad you're doing a reread. I just purchased volume 1 because I saw it at a used bookstore and I was
Oh,
like, "Oh
nice.
yeah, I want to read this." So
Yeah,
yeah.
I have the e editions and the physical paperbacks of these because I got to a point where I was like, I just like to zoom in on stuff and
Hmm.
see the art better. And maybe it's just I'm getting old and my eyes can't handle
Fair enough. We're both getting old.
paperbacks. Oh my gosh.
Uh
I've worn glasses for too long and my eyes are getting worse, apparently.
Oh, my
But
eyes are getting so much worse.
really, oh
Yeah. Oh,
no.
oh, yeah. I mean, like, it's just been a downhill. I remember when I first got glasses back in high school, I was like at a 2.25 or whatever. And then, like, it was pretty consistently okay. And then all of a sudden, in law school, it was just like, it's going to be bad. Like, and now I'm at like a 4.5 or something. Um,
I know, like,
eh,
every time I go to the optometrist, she's like, looks pretty good, but it looks like maybe you're straining your eyes a little bit. So don't like read in like dim light and that kind of. I'm like, oh, well, that's the only thing that I seem to do. So whoops.
whoopsie daisies. Oopsies. Yeah.
Oops. Okay. Hannah, what have you been reading and watching and enjoying?
Well, Zelda for sure, but I also watched May December. It's a new movie on Netflix with Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore
Oh,
and then
okay.
Charles Melton. So this is a
Okay,
very
okay.
strange movie. Julianne Moore plays a woman who uh was like famous for having a long-term relationship with her now husband that began when he was 13 years old.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, and so it's again, it's like kind of
Is it like the teacher that this
so it's
happened with,
inspired by that. That's the teacher.
but they didn't
And
make it icky like Adam Sandler
they didn't make
tried
it
to do?
icky like Adam Sandler. They didn't make it a joke. It's kind of it's a very weird movie. It's directed by a guy who's like kind of known for making some sensational TV movies, like and so this is like kind of his art house one. So there's a lot of like absurdist comedy in it where at one point like Julianne Moore is like looking in the fridge and she's like, I don't think we have enough hot dogs. And then it smash cuts to a barbecue full of hot dogs. And it's just like it's kind of showing that this is a very off-kilter person. And so uh Natalie Portman plays like this actress who's researching the role to play Julianne Moore. And it's kind of about her like learning a little bit more about them. But throughout the movie, you kind of realize like she's also a really bad person.
Oh
Who,
no.
because, and not in like a way that's like the Julianne Moore character who is like reprehensible because she victimized this
Mm-hmm.
child and now has like she's married to him and it's her like trying to convince everyone like what she did was okay. And
Mm-hmm.
in her mind, it feels like she is. Like there's a scene where her husband is kind of coming to terms with how messed up this story is.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, you seduced me. And it's like very sickening. And they're just
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a very weird and absurd movie that like is just kind of showing how something like this, like if you're looking at it from the outside looking in, you may not be like it. I think it, sorry, my thoughts are so jumbled, but like I think it looks a lot into like how we sensationalize things and then they become stories to us and we ignore like
Yeah.
the actual problem of the people who have this, where like even the Mary Kay Letourneau like scandal, because she was, you know, an awful predator, um, she was married to that guy for a very long
Yeah.
time. And it
Because
wasn't until
is if
like,
this is the person I'm thinking of, wasn't this like a thing where they would like do interviews together
mhm,
and everything, and they'd be like, "We're so in love," and he would say something, and she would like kind of give him a look and be like,
mhm,
"Why did you say that?" And he would be like, "Ah, what?"
yeah. And like as an update, like in 2017, he did file for separation. And like later in life, he's become
Mhm.
like more open about like, I understand what happened to me now, but like, you know, there is
Yeah,
just
that's unfortunate. And didn't she pass away
she did
recently?
pass away. So this is just kind of looking at like how that looks like later in life, how it may affect people, and like it also looks at like there are moments where Julianne Moore's character like you can tell she cares about how she looks, but she also
Mm,
thinks she's doing nothing wrong. So like there are a couple
mm,
moments where she's like almost threatening Natalie Portman, but Natalie Portman also is like pretending like she's such an interesting actress when it's like, no, you're just walking around this town kind of messing with people's
yeah.
lives, you know? So it was an interesting movie. Um,
Natalie Portman loves a weird role like this.
mhm. Well, and I think it has to be interesting because like Natalie Portman also has gone on the record about how she was treated as a child
Hmm.
actress,
Yeah.
specifically in the film Leon, um, and how she kind of feels like her treatment was predatory, and I tend to agree
Hmm.
with that. Um, and that's just like this is kind of looking at that in a very specific way about like the
Yeah.
history of everything. And there's like very weird moments where like Julianne Moore's character has like a lisp, which Mary Kay Letourneau did have.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's an interesting movie. I don't know. It's very bizarre, but like it's supposed to kind of be comedic in parts, and like it's not doing anyone any favors, but like in the movie, but like they they do a good job of showing like the one person who doesn't seem reprehensible is the person who did not have a choice when he was 13 years old.
Yeah.
So that's good. Um, but it's very strange. So I watched that movie because like lots of people are talking about it and talking about like
Sure.
what it meant and like is it a comedic type thing? Because like throughout the movie, like just stuff happens where you're like, oh, this is like absurdist comedic moments in like a very dark storyline. So
Hmm.
um and it's kind of about how like this isn't a story when you get down to it. It's like what happened to
Yeah, it's
someone.
a cause and effect
Yeah.
portrayal,
Uh
basically,
yeah.
which unfortunate.
Right. And so I watched that. And then for reading, I just finished Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby.
Oh, okay.
Um, this is I listened to it via audiobook, and I really love this author.
Okay. Yeah,
He
you
kind
read
of
Razorblade Tears, right?
yes, I read Razorblade Tears as well. And he writes a lot of books. He is a black author, which like he writes a lot about like poverty and
Okay.
race and like consequences in the South of like doing like what you think you have to, and like how and he writes a lot of like what I call almost 90s thrillers where like or like 90s action movies where like something
Okay.
happens and then like everything gets taken out of their control and like normal people have to do bad things.
Hmm.
So like in this book we follow Beauregard Montage, who is like a mechanic who opened his own store. He's like a husband, um and he is like kind of known for a long time. He was a getaway driver. Um
Okay.
and he like doesn't he kind of wants to live a life on the up and up. Um but he also likes to take shortcuts because he thinks that's what he has to do because like his dad was kind of a getaway driver when he was growing up. Um his dad kind of ran out on his family, but like through a lot of things he has to like get a lot of money in a short time. So he decides to like take a jewelry heist
Hmm.
deal with like this guy who is like always searching for a get rich quick thing. And it all falls to pieces. And so
Oh,
it like he's someone who's like, I can definitely like keep this part of myself separate from my family. I could be a successful dad.
he can't do
And
it.
he can't do it. And it's
Oh
like
no.
fascinating to read. I loved the narrator. I love the way Cosby like weaves this story because it's like a crime thriller. It's
Hmm.
mysterious and like it definitely has like that feeling of like it's in Mississippi and you could tell like he knows what he's talking about and like he's talking about
Hmm.
poverty and people who need to make money quick in the South and like
Hmm.
all of those things. And so I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was like tons of like fun to listen to. It kept me on the edge of my seat of like what's going to go wrong. They just did this jewelry heist and like I'm only halfway through the book. What's going to happen next?
Well, and it sounds like it's one of those situations where it's like a realistic enough thriller that
Yeah,
you buy into it,
right.
if that makes sense. Because I feel like
Yeah,
sometimes the situations in thrillers are just either so methodical or like
right.
cookie cutter, or they're so out there where it's like no, there's no way that this could possibly happen.
Exactly.
We're getting into fantasy territory because this doesn't seem real.
Exactly. And like this does have elements where it's like, oh, this is a little bit fantastical, but it's not like unrealistic.
Yeah.
And it's a very good and like high octane book, and I enjoyed it very much as like kind of just a quick book that you get to enjoy. And that's like, I know we're about to start a fantasy by a Black author. And I know like a lot of Black authors have kind of pushed like if you're only reading diversely to like read about like the history of race in America and like, you know, the nonfiction books or about like Black people's pain, you're not really reading diversely because you're still putting a certain group of people into a very specific pigeonhole. And you're supposed to read like other books. You're supposed to read romances. You're supposed to like read diversely in all genres across all boards because like no one is a monolith. So we can't only read monoliths. So like I like this book also because it is just fast paced, like actiony book that, you know, happens to be written by a Black person and focus in on, you know, Black people in the South. And I think that that's just as interesting as, you know, a lot of other books that, you know, I would
just
rather
as interesting
read.
as reading like a historical book about
Exactly.
Black people as well. So
right. And so that's always like my plug where it's like, oh yeah, I picked these books up because a lot of people are like, no, these are really good. And I'm like, no, that's a ton of fun. Like these are fun books. And they have like serious themes, but they have serious themes because like it's dealing with action and like bad people doing bad things. So yeah, but I really enjoyed that book and recommend.
How many hours was it?
Oh geez, let me see. Well, I read things at 2 times the speed.
I read at 1.5 to 1.75, but if it's like, I'm just wondering if it's like a 30-hour book or if
no, it's
like
not 30 hours.
7 or 8.
It's like 11 hours. It's a quick read.
So that's doable.
Yeah. And
usually when I see an audiobook that's like 30 hours, even if it's a book that I wanted to read, I'm like, nope.
No.
Scroll right by it.
These are like 300-page books. Like they're quick. Okay. They're tons of fun. Like they're definitely like genre books. And that's like I really do appreciate, and I know Laura does too, like we appreciate genre books sometimes where it's like, oh yeah, this is just like a fun romance or this is a fun like genre novel. Like this book isn't like super eruditic and it's not like the best book you're ever going to read, but it is one where I'm like, no, I had a good time. That's like, I love Tana French mystery novels, and it's like, is she the best writer that I'm ever going to read ever? No, but it's a good mystery novel that I had a good time with. And
I was just thinking about this kind of thing the other day because people are all putting together like their favorites of the year list, and I was looking back through, I put together like my favorite manga and graphic novel things of the year, and I was looking back through all of them that I've read because I read a ton of graphic novels this past year, and I was like, you know what, I'm throwing Rooster Fighter up there because that book was so freaking funny and bizarre. Like you can just like a book because it makes you laugh or like is a romp of a book. Like it does not have to be, like you said, the most fantastical piece of literature ever.
Right. I think like too many people want their favorite books to say something like good about them. And I'm like,
everybody wants to be like, my favorite book is East of Eden. Right. And here's the reasons why. And it's like it can be your favorite book and that's fine. You can just, you know, like a book that's just kind of goofy and fun and be like, that's my favorite book.
And like I think that there are certain books where it's like, no, this was just a fun time and I had a fun time doing it. And that's like it's vibes only. Like the vibes were good. It was a good time. Great. And so that one I'm like, yeah, some of these lines I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't believe you wrote that. I'm like, nope, vibes were good. I had a good time. No notes.
Dig it.
That's like for horror, like I read I was looking for shorter books and I listened to Stephen Grahams Jones because I've like listened to a couple of his books. He's horror. Yeah. He did a quick like novella called Night of the Mannequins. And I was like, this is a fascinating book. And like it's just a quick down and dirty horror thriller novel. And I'm like, no, I had a good time. It's great. And it got like 4.25. And I'm like, I don't think it's the best book ever, but like it's a good time.
Have you noticed that like the way that people want to like rate and judge and like select their favorites of books is so weird, and the way that people will consume movies and television and just like, this is a great movie, everyone should see it, and it's such a different like vibe to me. I don't know why, where it's like people want, it's like you said, people want the books that you claim as favorites or that you like to say something.
Right.
And we are not that way about other forms of media.
Mm-mm.
And I think we should like kind of take more of like the TV way that we are and put that on books where
Right.
it's just like you can just enjoy them all.
Right. Like, well, and I think that there's always the like, you have to be careful because I think a lot of like, again, like people who consume media, it's like white men who only read white male books where it's
Okay,
like,
yeah,
yeah, like that stuff. I always like to add that caveat because that's not
yeah,
what we're talking about. Or like
no,
white women who love like a good thriller because they like get into the torture porny of like, this
yeah,
could
no,
happen to me. That's not what we're talking about. But
no, no,
like,
no.
here's the thing. Laura and I make fun of Megan Miranda all the time, and I've listened
Yeah.
to every one of her audiobooks. I read so many other books that those are quick time things to get me out of
Mhm.
a rut. And I'm never going to be like, those are, I'm never going to be like, they're my favorite books, but there's nothing wrong with me enjoying them
No,
unless she
you
like
can
came out as a
like them.
terrible person. Like, it's like, they're my soap operas. Like, you and I
I
talked
just said that
about,
I love Rooster Fighter, and it's
right? Like,
absolutely bizarre book
right.
about a rooster with sonic crows. You can
Yeah.
like whatever you like.
As long as it's not harmful, who cares?
Yes.
Like, I love a good soap opera. I love a good silly film.
Hmm.
Like, but my
Exactly.
favorite,
As long as it's not harming anyone, as long as it's not like harmful themes,
right.
it's fine.
Yes. And as long as you're like asking yourself certain questions about the media you consume
Yes.
and you're being realistic about it, we don't
Hmm.
care. Like that's our point. So I always like to say
Yeah.
'cause like that you have men who are like, well, I just love reading like Hunter Thompson. And it's like, okay, well, like read a book by a woman. Just do it.
Yeah.
So that's our
Wouldn't
one
hurt.
caveat.
Wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
But Laura, are we about ready to get mesmerized
We are gonna
by
be, which
Legendborn?
we might be mesmered already
Uh,
because this book
this
has got a
is
lot going
fun.
on. It's complicated.
It's complicated, and like I will say that my favorite part about this is a YA novel, everyone. My
Yes.
favorite part
Yay.
about YA
I finally
novels
got a YA novel on the pod.
that is so funny is like sometimes the plot happens so fast. It's like, oh,
Oh yeah.
oh, you guys are just sitting down and they're going to reveal so much plot. Okay, cool. Like,
Well,
they're
and
not
that's
gonna...
the thing too. Like, this is, I think, you and I have talked about this many times, but with different YA novels. Because I've mentioned like, oh, I love this book, but there were times when I was confused, and you've said to me, YA novels go at a faster pace because younger people are able to just kind of gloss over things
Right. It's just
and
like, oh
don't think
yeah.
about it, and it's like, oh, okay. This I don't think does as much glossing, but
It doesn't
it's
do glossing, but it does do a
heavy on
nice
the like,
exposition dump.
yes, here's a dump of info. Don't forget it. We're moving on.
That is like at one point I was like, who is Felicity? I cannot tell you. If you pay me $20, I do not know who Felicity is. I know she is very important to the plot and I will learn who she is, but like couldn't be me. I'm like, there's a Felicity, there's a Sarah. It's just a bunch of white people names, which is the
Tor,
point, but
yeah,
like I can't
yeah.
do it. So anyway, well, we open on a moment where Laura was like, "Hey Hannah, are we okay to do this novel? Because we already said
Oh
we were going
gosh.
to."
So
Uh,
we still I pushed for this novel to be the one we did because Hannah and I were gonna buddy read it, and I had no idea what it was about. And I started reading it literally last week, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is about a girl whose mom passes away." And I immediately freaked out. I was like, "Hannah, are you going to feel comfortable covering this?" So here we go.
it's one of those things where I'm like, this is so different than how I lost my mom that it's not even like tangentially related. There are moments where I'm
Thank
like, oh,
God.
that's really well done. And moments that frustrate me, like when a friend is like, you've changed. And I'm like, well, her mom died 90 days ago. So
Yeah,
maybe give her this.
yeah.
Um, but that's neither here nor there. So we open in the prologue to police officers announcing to the main character, Bree, that her mother was killed in a hit and run, and they do not know what happened to her. And she kind of talks about how this is really upsetting to her because the last words that were ever said to her mother were said in anger because Bree and her best friend,
They got into early college,
they
which
got
is
into early college, which is kind of like a UNC's like early admission where you get to go as a junior and senior and like live on campus and finish out your high school years there.
You get college credit and yeah.
And so it's like it was very important to her, and she knew that her mom would freak out when she was signing up because her mom didn't really want her to do things like that. But both she and Alice got in. Alice's family was super excited, and her mom was super angry and couldn't believe she did this behind her back. And they were fighting about like whether or not she should be able to go. And then her mom left angrily and then died. So,
and I'll just say like right now, even like as we get a little more information about Bree's mom, this whole like her not wanting her to go to early college seems a little suspicious.
Yeah.
So we're learning as we go along, but I don't trust any of these characters except Bree. Everyone is so like shady that I'm like, do we know if we can be around this one yet? I don't know.
I don't know if we can be around anyone because it's just like trust no one. And so then we kind of smash cut to 3 months later, which again is not soon enough for how Alice treats Bree for someone dealing with grief. I get it. They're 16, but it was the most frustrating moments of the novel when I'm like, she lost her mom 3 months ago, Alice. Like, if your friend is
Here's the thing, though. I was going to point this out maybe a little bit later when we're introduced to another character, but Tracy Deonn is a master of writing people the ages that they are.
Yes. That like, is very true.
I have thought about this before, how YA authors do a great job writing younger people, but I have noticed specifically in this book how Tracy Deonn has crafted these characters and the dialogue that seems so realistic in the way that someone of that age would speak, whether they are an adult who seems like they're in their 50s or 60s or whether they are a teenager. So props, because that is difficult to do and not many authors can do it this well. This is immense skill in this writing.
And so we kind of smash cut. The girls are on campus now. They've started early high school. Bree's dad let her go. Alice's parents are early college. Sorry. And so they're at a quarry. They snuck off campus their first night there because Bree wanted to go party with one of the girls who is in college up at UNC.
They went to high school with.
And Charlotte's like, everyone does it. People like jump off the quarry. And Alice is like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? And Bree is like, I might want to. Like, I might want to try. I
kind of want to jump down into that water. Like,
and like Alice is kind of like, don't do that. You're smarter than that. Don't. And like Alice kind of like has an air of like, you're better than this. And Bree's like, I'm not really sure anymore. And she starts talking about herself as like the before Bree and the after Bree. And like after Bree is who lost her mom. And it is very like I talk about this all the time. Sorry, you guys are gonna get lots of dead mom content, but I always talk about like BoJack Horseman has a scene where it's like my mom is dead and everything is worse now. And that like line kept reverberating through my head like the entire day I lost my mom, about like my mom is dead and everything is worse now. And that like I feel like the before and after Bree is a very like specific way of writing that. And I adored how she talked about like, well, after Bree is harder and after Bree doesn't see the world as shiny and bright and like, and she's worried that people won't love the after Bree, which is also heartbreaking because she's like, if people knew who I am now, they wouldn't like it. And it's like, oh, poor girl.
I just love the portrayal of them being totally separate people though, because I feel like not just experiencing the loss of someone, but experiencing a traumatic event such as this, people can literally change. And the way that she sees herself as a different person now and tries to hide that different person, I thought that was heartbreaking and so beautiful.
Right. And so they also meet Charlotte's boyfriend, Evan, who is like a redhead who is like microaggressing Bree by being like, your hair is amazing. And she's like,
wow, I love his hair.
Like, my hair is curly and it's very bad right now because it's humid. Like, and also it's like, oh my gosh, you're the girl whose mom died. And it's like, who would ever say that. Like, don't do
Because they
that.
all kind of know about the situation, it seems
Hmm.
like, where they're like, yeah, there was a hit and run accident. Like, oh, yeah, you're the one who has the dead mom. Like, come on, people.
Right. And so she also has a moment where someone's like, I'm sorry for your loss. And she's like, she's not lost. Like, why do people say
Mhm.
that? It's very stupid. But they're all kind of just hanging out. They all decide to go back to the party, and Bree wants to watch them, watch people jump off the quarry for a little bit longer. And then she meets a mysterious man with dark hair and light eyes, amber eyes, and it's like, oh, we are definitely in a way at YA novel now.
Like,
uh,
he is pale and has dark hair and amber eyes. Like,
and he's
suspicious
and
and
he's
good
very
looking.
broody. He's very broody, and he's like, "I'm Selwyn Kane," and it's like, oh, "Of course you are."
Yeah,
Like,
of course
um,
your name is Selwyn. Like, yes.
and she feels like he has like tiny electricity coming off of him.
Hmm.
It's very weird, and he like she covers her face because she feels like something's coming towards her, and he's like, "Why did you just do that?" And she's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. And then he like grabs onto her, and it's very scary. And she's like, "Could you let go of me?" And
Because
she,
she's just met this boy. And
right.
honestly, like a lot of this kind of brings me back to like my own college experiences, like going to your first party and
Hmm.
trying to like make friends with people that you don't know and feeling uncomfortable. If some guy would have just like come over and grabbed me, I would have been like, what the heck is happening here?
Right. And so all of a sudden they hear some yelling, and Selwyn is like, "Got you." And she's like, "Got who?" And he like looks over her like, "You're still here?" Like it's a very
Hmm.
weird moment. And then they start running because she's really scared that Alice is in a situation that's not okay. And she starts like looking for her in the crowd. There's a huge brawl that's like been broken up, or that's currently undergoing. A bunch of like football
It's like,
players are
yeah,
fighting,
they're
and
randomly fighting.
someone's like, "You guys, the cops are gonna get called," and everyone's very worried. And Bree feels bad because she's like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get to Alice. Like, I'm the one who dragged her here. If she gets called over by the
Mhm.
cops,
Well,
she's
because
gonna
she
freak
wanted to
out."
leave.
Yeah, and
And
so
this could be jeopardizing their whole stay, really,
right,
at early college.
and then all of a sudden she sees Selwyn Kane appear, and she feels like a word. She feels like he's speaking to her, and she hears
Hmm.
the word leave, and all of a sudden she like blacks in as she's walking away, and she's like, "What
Hmm.
just happened? How did I leave? Like that felt really weird." She was able to shake it off, and she runs back because she sees like there's an explosion in Technicolor.
Hmm.
And she sees Selwyn and with a girl that is called Tor. She's a blonde girl who also like the most YA, where like she sees Tor in a crowd and she immediately is like, Alice would be interested in her. And I'm like, oh, this is the most YA novel in the world. I
The
love
gay best
it.
friend.
The gay best friend. Um, and so Tor is there with Selwyn, and she's like, "Hey, can we get this over quick? I have to meet Sarah for drinks at Tap Rail." And he's like, "She'll understand why you're late. Like, come on, we gotta wipe some kids' memories." I love how like quick this is, where he's like, "We gotta wipe some kids' memories," and it's like, "Oh, we're moving at a great pace, guys. It's page
But the way that
23."
Brie questions all of it too is just like, wait, what? We gotta wipe some people's memories. What?
And so,
Why is no one questioning that?
and she's kind of like, "I could leave, or I could just watch what they're doing. I'm gonna watch what they're doing." Uh, And so there is like a weird thing that's suddenly there, that they start like fighting, and they talk about like
Hmm.
wings, and there's like a mass, and she's wondering what's going on. It's writhing. It looks like a possum with wings. It's very strange.
Hmm.
And then the football players, they like sent them away, and their eyes are unfocused, and she freaks out because she's like, I think that's what I looked like not too long ago. Um, and then she hears the thing screech, and it's like Merlin. And she's like, Merlin, like King Arthur? And I'm like, oh, so funny. And it calls Selwyn a king's mage. And she's like, that means that there's magic here. And Sel is like, look, how did it get off like campus? The magic shouldn't like travel this far.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
know that it's probably tied to campus. And then this is my favorite part of the book, where it tells you how to pronounce something in the pages, where it's
Yes.
like, oh, it's an a seal, long E in a seal. And I was like, thank you. I needed to know that. Like, I didn't have to turn to the back of the book or say Isel on the podcast for the
I was
first
gonna say,
book and a half until someone's like, actually, it's a seal, Hannah. Like,
how many times have I pronounced things wrong? I've just gotten to the point now where I'm just like, don't even try, Laura.
just say it with confidence. Someone will
I
correct you.
do, and the author always does.
I know. But it starts, the seals calling them nosy Legendborns, and they're like asking why he's here. It says it's feeding. And Sel's like, yeah, I know, but like, why were you off campus? And it's just kind of like talking about how the gate it came through, or the gate that was on campus, isn't its gate, and it's very confusing. And so then Bree is worried that they're going to see her, so she has to like get away from them. And she starts running through the shadows to make sure that they're nowhere to be seen. But when she bursts into the clearing where the cars are, the cops have showed up. And she's a good friend because she immediately turns herself in. I was like, wow, she just like walks over to the cop. And
to save Alice.
I know. And so Alice doesn't have to be alone. And so he lets Charlotte off with a warning, but he does take Alice and Bree with him. Kind of, it seems because they might be like a little bit too underage, but it didn't seem clear as to why he's like, you two are coming with me. And she does talk about like, she is a Black girl. It's not great being in the back of a cop car and you at UNC, like it doesn't feel good. So she's trying to whisper to Alice about something happening, and Alice is like, I do not want to talk to you right now. I'm so pissed at you. I did not want to go to this party. And then the police officer is like, don't speak. And then all of a sudden he pulls up and they see two figures, and it turns out to be Sel and Tor. Another thing that this book has a plethora of is shortening of names. Everyone has a shortened name. Can I call you Lore for the rest of the series?
Absolutely not.
You can call me Han.
I am notorious for hating nicknames for myself. Like I do not like nicknames. I
prefer
to be called by my name.
They're like, my name is Sarah, but you can call me Sarah. And I'm like, why?
No.
Like, you could just call her Sarah.
It's 2 syllables. It's
not that hard.
Good. Nope.
But the deputy seems to recognize Selin and Tor, or they call him Sel, and it's like, he's like, oh, like, didn't recognize y'all. You guys are out and about. And Selwyn is like, yeah, get these two back. And so she's freaking out. She's like, well, he just took orders from like an 18-year-old kid. That's not great.
But this college campus also has a lot of legacies and, rich kids and everything. So there's a lot of that going on as well.
I do like that Bree never kind of questions. She's immediately like, so magic is real. It's here on campus. What's going on? And they get dropped off at their dorm room. They kind of go to bed, and Alice is very upset. And then she wakes them up and she's like, we have a meeting with the dean. And we also we know that Charlotte's like apologizing to them on text messages, but they have to go over, and they're
just like, Bree's like, please stop texting. Like, I'm not responding to that. No.
Right. And so they go. The dean isn't super nice to Bree.
No.
Also when the deputy was in the car with Bree, he did microaggress her by being like,
oh yeah,
how did you get in? And she's like, merit. And he's like, sure you did.
Yeah,
and the
implication, I
hated that. I mean, that is how people are treated.
I know.
So it's definitely it was very bad, and I hated that deputy so much.
Yeah.
So they do there's also a mention of the fact that there's a Confederate statue facing north on campus. So it's all very true.
Yeah.
But anyway, I do like
the treatment of the cops towards her and the other students, the way that they react to her. There's mentions of like, oh, diversity now, and it's like, oh,
right to your face where you're like, being trotted out like, oh, look, we're gonna have the most diverse group ever, and it's like, well, that's not fun to hear when it's like one Black person and one non-binary person, and it's like, aren't we diverse? And it's like, what the so anyway, the dean is like, so like, you guys, I was expecting better of you. Like, you guys are still underage. I did like that, like, this was a reasonable reaction when you have high schoolers on campus. But they're like,
I wouldn't
so you're
say
16.
Like, so like, I don't think that the dean here is always the nicest. Like, I do
No.
think there are definitely microaggressions that occur.
Yes.
However, I will say that the dean also is within the realm of scolding still somewhat like reasonable, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, where it's like, you guys are here like part of a early admittance program. Like, this is supposed to be considered an honor. Not a lot
Right.
of people get this, and you're really pushing it by partying on the first day.
First
And
day, like you can't even pretend like you're
like
supposed to not do this stuff. So it was, he
like
definitely
you guys are
microaggressed.
high achievers in all your academics and everything. Like, we did not really expect this. Like, come on.
But he also does point out that Bree's mother went here.
Hmm.
That Bree is a very smart individual, but like he would be watching her, and like again,
Hmm.
microaggressions abound.
Yeah.
But he also tells them that they will need to be placed with two students who are like older
Mentors.
mentors, and she's like, we don't need a babysitter, and he goes, well, obviously you do.
Yep.
And I was like, well, they are 16, so that is like, yeah, you can't
I
just
feel like
sneak
they would
out.
maybe have already had some kind of like mentor program
Right,
in
that is
place for
weird.
16-year-olds who are going to be on campus with likely like 23-year-olds at,
Right.
I don't know, the way that I feel like the age groups in college vary quite a bit. So it seems kind of odd that they wouldn't have already had some kind of mentorship program.
And we also find out a little bit because like Alice is just someone who is like, we're very lucky to be here. And
Mhm.
Bria's like, well, we both got in and they said lots of people go to the quarry. So like, why are we getting in so much trouble? She's like
Yeah.
more questioning that Alice is, where Alice is like, look, my parents were really excited that I was able to get into this program. I worked really hard. And they do have like
Hmm.
kind of a fight afterwards where she's like, you don't have to work at school. I have to work at school. And
Yeah.
like, this is a big deal if I get kicked out.
And she very much has a lot of pressure from her parents, it seems like. And she also, I kind of think, seems more timid, if that
mhm,
makes sense. And I think when you're more of a timid person, any kind of like confrontation like this, especially, is going to just shock you to your core. And so
right,
Alice does this thing where she like almost overcorrects,
right.
where it's like, instead of just like saying, okay, well, we'll do better, she like gets mad at Bree even about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's not fair. But
Right. And they leave the meeting, and Alice is really like way harsh tie moment
yeah.
with her, where she's like, what are you doing? You didn't have to work to get in here. I did have to work to get in here. Like,
Hmm.
you can just walk in on your merit and on like your legacy. And I had to work really hard. And Bree's like, that's unfair. And she's like, well, it doesn't even feel like you want to be here anymore, which is where I was like, her mom died not that long ago, Alice. Like,
Yeah.
calm down. And she's
And
like,
this is what I mean about Alice like acting with the way that like being like kind of like, I don't know, reprimanded a little bit. She
yeah,
immediately goes into like attack mode on her
yeah.
friend who is her safe space, you know? So it's like,
Where she's like, do
that's
you
not
even
the
want
right
to
move.
be here anymore? Like, if you, I kind of
You've
thought
really changed.
you've really changed. And she's like, you're not even taking that hard of courses. And Brie has a moment where she was like, well, like, yeah, they're not the hardest of courses, but like, we, we are taking early college courses now. Like, I
Yeah.
was just trying to be a responsible human. And I also was thinking, like, yeah, the year your mom died, you're going to take an easier course load. Like, I've had
But
friends who,
also, I'll just say, like, so as someone who went into college and jumped like from one chemistry to the next as a freshman, I shouldn't have done that because it was way harder and it would have been easier to just like do the easier chemistry and like have the
mhm,
refresher, and you still would have been on track and probably would have gotten better grades in those chemistry classes. So
right.
just saying, Bree's doing nothing wrong by taking like
No.
the 100 level class to start off with.
And she kind of talks about like how Bree's now acting like nothing matters,
Hmm.
and it's just like a very strange thing. And Bree kind of like gets defensive, and she's just like, you did not have to go with me last night. You chose to,
Hmm.
and you can't blame me for all of your decisions.
Yep.
And she's like, well, I can't trust you. You were just gonna go off with Charlotte and do what you wanted. And she was like, okay, so you're my babysitter now too. Like, that's
Yeah.
unfair. Um, and so Alice is again overcorrecting, and she's like, well, get your own life choices in order, and like stomps
Hmm.
off. So uh immediately Brie gets texted like in class by a Nick Davis who's like, hey, I heard that I'm like your new mentor, want to meet after
It's
class?
like the
And
next morning or
oh, it's
something
the
like
next
that.
morning.
Yeah,
And,
it's I don't think it's immediately, but
No, it's like immediate,
it's pretty
Laura.
soon.
No, it's immediate. Her phone buzzes like she makes it
Oh,
halfway to Old East before I have to pause my breath. And so it's like
I thought it was
he
like the next morning or something.
no.
Oh,
Like
weird.
she's still reeling. And Nick immediately is like, hey, I'm supposed to help you. What's going on? Want to meet up? And she's just like, oh my, because
Ignore.
she's supposed to meet him by the end of the day.
Hmm.
But she does talk to her dad. She doesn't tell him about what happened. She's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's everything's great. Thank you." But she
That was one of
also
those things where I'm like, I can tell I'm an adult and reading this book because I'm like, oh, you really should have told your dad some of what happened. I don't like that withholding of information.
right. Well, and also I do also very much appreciate this book because it talks about why she had to leave. And a huge
Yeah.
part is like she's a teenager who couldn't handle her dad's grief over losing the love of his life. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, that hurts me very specifically.
Yep.
Like, uh, and I think that that's a very like appropriate thing that Tracy Deonn does. And I definitely want to talk about it in themes because I'm like, that is very smart to have like a high schooler be like, I can't handle this. I am a
Yeah.
child. Um, and so like he is like in the midst
These are
of
things
grief.
adults cannot handle. So it's really fascinating to see this portrayed in a child and the
Hmm.
way that I mean, Bree is very much 16 years old, but at the same time very mature.
Yes. And so she kind of is like,
But it's realistic.
he starts talking about his grief and she's like, I have to stop. I cannot talk to you about this. And she like gets off the phone really quick.
Mhm.
And then she realizes that the weird like magic that she saw Cell do last night, she recognizes it somewhere. And she's like, where do I recognize it? And then she realizes that she saw it the night her mother died. And she thinks the police officer tampered with
Yep.
her memory the same way that Cell did. Um, and then she goes to class, and her dad does find out about what happened. And he's like, you better call me. And she's like, I'll call you after dinner. And then Nick texts her again. He's like, hey, meet you after dinner. And she's like, I do not want to speak to this person. Get
Yeah,
him
she just
away from
ignores it
me.
again. She's like, forget this. Like, this is stupid. I don't need a babysitter.
So then she does like text Charlotte because she wants information on
Hmm.
Cell. And she's like, I saw him there with like a tour, I think. And she's like, those two don't hang out. That's not a thing. And it's like, how do
They definitely never hang out. Like, no, no.
this is she's like, but they're like Tor's like old money. She's a serious legacy. Victoria Morgan. And it's a very strange thing where I'm like, how do people in college know each other in these books? Where it's like the other, like, I think Selwyn, Tor, and Charlotte are all supposed to be in college.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I didn't know people in our college. Like,
Yeah, I
um,
I wonder about the size of this place, but I also feel like within Greek systems,
that's
we
fair.
know we know within like the Greek system because we went to a college with a large Greek system that people do kind of know each other
Right.
within different sororities and fraternities and know who the legacies are and who has a lot of money from this or that. So I kind of got it.
Right. And Tor's a regular junior, but Cell is an early acceptance junior, like
Hmm.
Charlotte. So it's there's a little bit of a difference. And then she's like, want to go to a party tonight? And she's like, no, I can't.
So how old
Like
would Cell be? I'm trying to remember.
I
So if
forget.
because if you start off when you're 16 for early college, so 60, 70, 18, 18 or 19 maybe.
Yeah, I think he's like 18 or 19.
But he's a junior. Okay.
Yeah. It just says he's an EC junior, so I have no idea.
Yeah, so I would
Um,
get because I think Bree is 16, so yeah, so like 19-ish.
yeah. It's very straight. I'm not sure I fully understand how it all works, but
Hmm.
we'll figure it out by the end of the book, guys, or we
Yeah.
won't. And
He's just
so
like a couple years older than Bree.
yeah. And so Bree goes to dinner that night, and then Nick is waiting outside the dinner area, and he's like, I figured
Just
out which place.
screams like
I know.
Bree
Yeah.
Matthews.
And she's like, who is this? He screams puppy dog, pretty much energy,
Mhm.
where he's like, look, you weren't texting me back. So I got your picture from the dean's office. And she's like, that's creepy. And he's like, well, you did sign away your rights to your photo. So I was able to look at
Mhm.
it and see that you got off at such and such a time. And so you probably were eating dinner here. And so then I just picked your most likely route. And she's like, that's incredibly creepy. And he's like, or smart. And she's like, nope, just creepy. Like,
And I was
um,
like, yep, just creepy.
yep. And so then he kind of exposition dumps everything. Um, and they kind of talk about like, why did you come to school? And she's like, well, I lost my mom. And like he gets quiet after that. Um, and so then they're just kind of chit-chatting. She doesn't really want to talk to him. She doesn't really want to talk about like why she's there or anything. And then all of a sudden she sees something that looks like the magic from last night, and she immediately runs towards the danger.
Which is hilarious because I can just like see these two people walking on campus and her not being interested in this conversation with this babysitter man and just immediately running towards the thing that she saw the night before because she needs her questions answered.
I know, it's very funny. And so she suddenly sees this like beast that looks like almost wolf-like, I think, and it has like it looks very scary. She's freaking out and it like goes to attack her when all of a sudden Nick steps in uh with a sword and starts fighting
Yep.
it. And he's like, Bree, run, get out of here. Um and she is trying to get, she's like kind of freezing. She knows that he's trapped, and so then she tries to distract it, and so it goes to like attack her, and Nick kills it. um and so, but not before like saliva gets on her, and then she blacks out. So
Yeah.
then she blacks in, and she like hears voices, and they're like, it was a hellhound saliva. And they're like, on campus corporeal, that's impossible. And they're trying to like help her. And they talk about how like she needs help, and Ather isn't meant for once-borns, and they're like, do it, get it done now. So then she wakes up, and Nick is there, and she's talking about like what happened, and she says that he's a Legendborn, and he's like, are you a new page? William didn't recognize you. And she he's like, you also saw a hellhound, that's so weird. She like is trying to
Well, and
figure,
she's mega confused too because she's like,
right,
what does this mean? What are you talking about? And they're all kind of getting mad at her when she's not revealing like how she did certain things, especially Nick. He's
right,
like, shut up. Well, how do you know about this? Like, seriously, tell me the truth. And she's like, yeah. And she's kind of trying to like play it cool and
well, she
act
definitely
like
like
she
throws
knows
out,
because she wants to figure out more.
she does what people do on a first date where they don't want to admit that they don't know what someone's talking about. They
Yeah.
like pretend to kind of know, where she's like, well, yeah, I totally know what the code is. And like, couldn't you just erase my memory? And he's like,
Yeah.
no. And she's like, oh, because you're not a Merlin? And he's like,
She knows
yeah.
just enough.
And she's like, yeah, like, he is talking to her, and he's like, hey, answer my questions. Like, how do you know all this? This is ridiculous. And so she is like, he does kind of answer some of her stuff. And he just tells her about like hellhounds, which are lowest intelligence of the lesser demons. There are demons in this world. Um,
Yeah, there are lesser and greater demons.
yeah. And they're like
We learn.
partial corporeal, which means they're still invisible to once-borns, but they can injure living flesh. And they like pick up on Ather. And he,
I think is it Aether?
oh, Aether, sorry. They pick up on Aether. Um, and she's sitting there like trying to be like, what's going on? And he's like, well, why did you run towards it, you idiot? Like, you're not supposed to
Yeah.
run towards that. You can't fight it. I could have eaten both your arms. And she was like, uh, he's she kind of is like, I didn't know that they were demons. And he's like, okay, well, you're either really stubborn or very new. Um, and so she's kind of very confused. There's a lot going back and forth on like what these people were, how like the hellhound attacked her, how um Shadowborn are these evil creatures that can cross over, and they're invisible until like they build up on the Aether. And then they can kind of come into this world and wreak havoc. Um, and uh, she kind of asks how it's all possible, and he's like, are we really doing this? And he's like, well, usually like it's an ignorance of a page, and he just assumes that she's a page. So she, again, it's like a big exposition dump where I'm like, Nick, how are you not asking more questions? She has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Like,
The way that he just immediately assumes that she knows what she's talking about and like tries to like kind of make conversations like, oh, come on.
right. And so all of a sudden they're kind of just talking about last night in the quarry with Cell, and how he tried to make her forget, but she didn't. And he's like, wait, what? And she's like, yeah, he tried to make me forget, but I did it. And he's like, that's impossible. And then all of a sudden, Sal arrives because this book does work at a breakneck speed. And he's like, where is he? And Nick is like, hey, whatever you do, you cannot tell Sal that you remember what happened last night. You have to pretend you do not know who he is. Um, and so Sal comes in, he calls him the prodigal son. And he asks if like, why did you go after this hellhound? Like, did you even kill it? Do you even know what you're doing? And Nick is like, yes, I do. Like, calm down. And he calls him like he says he's busy playing Onceborn, so he like doesn't know what to do on closing a gate. And at this point, Bree is like, I think I'm gonna try to escape through the window.
I love Brie.
And then she's like, even if I got out, I don't know where I am. Um, and so Sel kind of breaks in and he well at one point William is like, hey, there's like a guy named William who helped heal her. And he's like, hey, you know, these walls aren't soundproof. So like she's in there listening to everything you say. And so Sel walks in. He says he's seen her twice in one night. She's gotten in the way. Um, and he like he goes, we've met, but she doesn't remember that. And he kind of like thinks that she's probably a problem, but Nick steps in. He's like, dude, it was an accident. Like, you need to calm down. Um, but he tells her to make sure to like, he's like, okay, just wipe her memory. And Selwyn goes to do that. And Bree bites on her lip really hard, like kind of out of fear of losing control of her things and her memories. So then she wakes up the next morning in her room and she doesn't remember anything that happened last night. And Alice says
Alice is pissed.
Well, I get it because Alice is like, you came home blackout drunk last night. And like, and she's like, I've never been blackout drunk in my life. And she's like, really upset. She's like, that didn't happen. You know me. I wouldn't do that. And Alice is like, I don't know you anymore. And it's like, okay, well, if she's saying she doesn't remember, like, you should be concerned for your friend.
Maybe be a little more concerned. Like, it's 2 days. It's not your entire friendship.
Right. And it's very quick where she's like, I didn't think you'd be so pedestrian. You're such a stereotype. I knew that sometimes friends grow apart, but I didn't think it would be us. And I'm like, it's been 48 hours.
Yeah.
And like, what? It's very confusing.
But the way that she's immediately just like, of course you would be a party girl. Of course you're going to be a stereotypical party girl. Ugh, you're ruining our friendship this soon. And it's like, oh, really?
I know.
No,
but she goes to brush her teeth and she all of a sudden like finds the bite mark and she remembers everything. So she searches out Nick. She breaks into his class. She knows like all the questions on a test. It's very funny where she's like, I'm just going to help you. We're going to work on this together.
Because doesn't she go into his science? Is it biology that she's in? And she's like, yeah, this is like super easy.
Genetics or something.
Yeah, it's a genetics class.
And so he's like, I can never remember DNA versus RNA versus
DNA and RNA and mRNA, messenger RNA. This was right up my alley. I know. A bio major.
I was like, well, this is very helpful for students who are in high school learning about all these things.
Yeah.
Because she's quick, like, dude, I know all these answers. Here's the differences. Let's do this partner work.
Yeah, I love that breakdown.
And then she's kind of like, I want to know what's going on. I remember everything. And he's like, how are you doing this? And she's like, I think it's the pain, but I don't know. And he's like, just forget everything you saw. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything else. This is dangerous. I'm going to get you a new mentor. And she's like, okay, plan B. And so then she researches where to go to, like, she's like, I know that this has something to do with Arthur and Arthurian legends, so I will look it up. And this historical building looks like the Keeper. And so she goes in and she's like,
I love that she's immediately just like super okay with like secret societies, Arthurian legends. Boom. And I think that's hilarious because I feel like most people would be questioning like, oh, really? I don't think that is the thing. So I love how okay she is with it and just like follow it.
Well, and then her dad calls and he's like, you didn't call after dinner. And she's like, look, something happened. I'm so sorry. And he's like, I don't really care. You need to figure this out. So she goes to the lodge, which is like, oh, this is like Arthurian legend type stuff. There's some stuff in there. She talks about like, well, we're in the South, so it's all going to be a little bit racist. And this building feels a little bit racist. And so she goes up, she knocks on the door. And a girl named Sarah answers. And she's like, hey, Nick told me to meet him here. And the girl's like, Nick's coming here tonight? Are you kidding me? And she's like, yeah, he told me. Like, I'm so sorry. Am I early? And the girl's like, don't worry, just like come inside. You're totally fine. And she's like, I didn't realize like Nick was gonna sponsor someone this year. And she's like, sponsor, what's going on? Um, and the girl offers her coffee, Perrier, wine, and she's like, no, I'm fine, thank you. And then she's like, okay, well, I'll go let Nick know that you're here. And so um she also sees like a bunch of like there's a like a bronze plate with a Jonathan Davis listed. Nick's
Mm-hmm.
last name is Davis because of course
Mm-hmm.
it is. uh and then
He's a
Nick comes,
legacy.
yep, and then 10 minutes later he bursts in the room and he's like, what's going on here? You need to get out of here before everyone else arrives, especially Cell. And so she does level with him and she's like, look, this is not the first time my memory has been tampered with. My mom died and I think the police officer did something and it's not okay. I think he was Merlin. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, do you think you could tell me who it is? And he's like, there are hundreds of us. I don't think that's possible. And she's like, well, I had to figure out what's going on. Like, could a Merlin kill someone? And he's like, usually not. Like, we're supposed to be fighting
Mm-hmm.
like evil spirits. And she's like, but could it happen? And he's like, technically, their job is to make sure we are protected. So, yes, they could have done that. And she's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, then I need to figure out who this was and what happened to my mom because, like,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't die from a hit and run, and I need to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she's kind of like, look, could you just sponsor me in this club? I could just join. Uh, and he's like, look, no, even if this were
He really
possible,
does not want her to be there. He's like a little more interested now, but
yeah.
at the same time, he's like, look, you really just need to go. I don't think this is the right place for you to be. I think you're gonna really regret this. It's unsafe. Like, please just get out of here as fast as you can.
And she's like, nope, I have to figure out what's going on. And, I'm stubborn. And he's like, look, Bree, like, they think I'm your sponsor to like be a page to become like a squire or something,
Squire.
a squire. And like, that is something where you have to fight for it. And these people have trained for months and they've done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work in order to get that title. And like, you're in over your head. The regions do not want someone like you in this
Mm-hmm.
role. Like, you are an outsider. You don't know what's going on. So, like, please leave. And she's kind of like, nope. I really need this and you have no idea how much it means. And she's like, the last words I said to my mom were in anger. And like, if you don't help me, we'll find another way. And so
Yep.
he is like, okay, let's do this. And a guy
I like
walks
that
in.
he really tries. He's never so far in a position where he like tries to sway her. He lays out the information. Is I mean, not all the information, but he lays out the choices and he's like, I really don't think you should do this. But when she chooses, he respects that decision.
I do like
Uh,
that a lot. I think that's really nice.
because I
Um,
feel like a lot of people that if he really wanted her to not do it, he would just like go against her wishes. You know what I mean?
and so then a guy named Fitz walks in, and he's kind of broy, it feels like.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is your new page. And he's like, yeah, I came to reclaim my title. And then we meet a lot of white people.
Hmm.
We meet Fitz, who's like, oh, this is your page. And she's
And I
like,
don't know why I was like picturing all of them having like Valley Girl type accents, but this is definitely not the situation because we are in the Carolinas and they would have Southern
yeah.
accents.
I mean, they all come from all over, I guess, but who
Yeah.
knows? And so he like Nick, she's like, so I belong to you, and he's like, not like that, not like that. Like it's just like it's a page. Like
Yeah.
those are honorary roles and titles where like people
Hmm.
volunteered. It's not like that. And she's like, okay, sure. And so he does give her um a heavy silver coin, like the one that Sarah has like on a bracelet. So she's kind of like, okay, that probably means like I am his page now. And she doesn't love the
Hmm.
connotations, but he breaks down a couple of rules where like she can't talk about the quarry. She has to like go with the flow and she can't like become too suspicious looking. She also wonders what these coins are about, but they all just kind of quick talk to each other. We meet Russ, who and Brianna, um, and they're talking and Bree is kind of, or sorry, that's Bree's name.
Yeah,
But
Bree's name is
Bree,
Brianna.
yeah, sorry. And so Bree is like, they kind of make fun of the fact that she's in a t-shirt and jeans, and she's like, oh, great. And they also meet a Felicity, and she kind of asks Nick, like, why do you hate Russ and Felicity? And he's like, I don't hate them. I just like did not want this life. He's very much like, this is my life, not you, or this is your life, not mine. He's
Mm-hmm.
doing that to everyone in the room, kind of. Um, and she also meets a couple other people that Nick seems to vibe with a little bit more. And we also have a huge exposition dump here where it's like, yes, you have the pages, you have the squires, you have vassals who are once born outsiders who are sworn to the code and the order, but they don't work directly with Legendborns. They just kind of work outside. And they're like CEOs, officials, members, presidents. And she's like, oh, the cop I met was probably a vassal.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a huge insider group of people that are trying to keep these Legendborns in power. And he like tells her to make sure to keep her head down. We meet Craig McMahon, a fourth year page. We meet like a couple different squires, and they talk about like which lineage that they're from. It's all a lot of people you're meeting very quickly in a row, and I
Yeah.
cannot keep them straight.
I mean, I don't blame you because a lot of times when I was reading this, I'm just like kind of glossing over some of these names because I was just like, oh,
How important can they be? Um,
exactly. Where I was just like, if they're gonna become more important, they're going to.
right. I think Greer is the most important one, who is the
Yes.
non-binary person who was like,
Hmm.
hey, my whole family was vassals. Now I'm up for a page
And is the other
position.
one Witty?
Yes, I believe so. And so these people
They're her
seem,
friends as
yeah,
Paige.
they seem much nicer. And so they say
Hmm.
something about King Arthur, and she's like, is King Arthur a real person? And he's like, yes, but not in the way you think. And she's like, what is the way I'm thinking?
Hmm.
And they kind of talk about just like the history of King Arthur, how the legend progressed, like the importance of it, and like how they're fighting for good and evil. They're kind of taken on a tour, and while they're there, they find some handcuffs from the Salem witch trials,
Hmm.
and they kind of were like, well, back then we had to fight people and we had to make sure everything was on the up and up. And she does take this to mean like, oh, you guys like fought the people who were witches, and you guys were against people, and you guys
Yeah.
handcuffed people, which is also important because she doesn't trust these people because she thinks they have something to do with her mother. And so then they start like they welcome everyone. Tor is the one who's talking to them. She's from the line of Tristan. She's third ranked, and she has a similar bracelet to the one that Sarah is wearing. And so they're all kind of just talking. They're going on about the history, and she does say like, we have the most diverse class in all of history.
Yeah, this is the
And
line that I was thinking of, and it's just like,
I know.
why? Because they have, and it's like you said, they have one black person and one non-binary person. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And so they kind of discuss their rights, they discuss the history, and then they have to go to this like first ceremony type thing.
Hmm.
And they make sure that they can't see for a while. And they walk for about 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And like she kind of has no idea where they're going. They're being guided. But all of a sudden, Cell shows up, and he says that he thinks that uh, Bree is an Ushel. And she's like, Uchel. It's like, or a lock, an
I don't,
Uchel, Uchel,
I thought it was like
Uchel,
Uckle or Eichel or something like that. I don't
lock,
know because
Uchel.
it's like
Yeah, it's
they
Ukel.
said it
Sorry, it's an Ukel.
Ukel because I
Yeah,
thought there was like a hard ch where
it
like
is
lock
a yeah, it's a hard ch like lock, so it's an Ukel.
Ukel.
So he
Okay.
calls her an Ukel, and she's like, "What the heck is that?" And Nick is like, "No, she's not. She's my page. I'm the one who brought her in here." And
Hmm.
so like kind of sounds like he is about to use magic against her. She freaks out. She
He's
hears
like
like,
ready to fight because he's like, this is a Shadowborn and I am
and
supposed to protect everyone.
she's blind. But all of a sudden, Dr. Martin Davis, Nick's father, steps in, and he's like, everyone calm down.
Hmm.
This is a person who like brought Nick back into the fold. Let's all just like do this. And he kind of is like, look, we are led by men. We have to trust this and we have to grow with it. So, and so he meets Bree. And then there he's like, thank you for bringing my son back to claim his title. And she's like, okay. And so then they have this ceremony where like she can finally see again. It's
Mm-hmm.
very weird and unsettling for her where they're like in this dark area with candles.
Which
Doctor,
that would be unsettling because why do
right?
they have to be all blindfolded? But I guess it's explained that they don't want anybody to have an unfair advantage or whatever in this, but still creepy.
But anyway, like Dr. Martin goes through like their history. He talks about like how important it is to keep things running, how the vassal friends are important to them, and they've like advanced them into the modern age. And it's just like a whole, it's again a huge plot dump of like all the different
Mm-hmm.
people, and then they bring them all through, and we learn about the different lines like Owain, the line of Bors, the line of Lamorak,
Mm-hmm.
and like they all swear fealty. And she also finds out during this that Nick is the heir of King Arthur Pendragon of Britain,
Mm-hmm.
the son of Uther Pendragon. And she's like, okay, so he is the heir. What's going on? And so they like grant them all sight to see the different like Shadowborn, and she has to swear fealty to them. And during this time, she can feel like her body working against it,
Yeah.
uh, because she's lying and she knows she's lying. And like Nick kind of looks at her and he's like,
And I
people.
like that she has that internal like feeling uncomfortable with this because she's like, yeah, I cannot make that kind of promise and this feels really icky, but at the same
Mhm.
time I have to do this if I want to learn more. Like, ugh.
But Nick seems to be able to do something to make sure like it doesn't hurt her too much, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he seems to like let up on the oath a little bit. So that's helpful. And then they're going through this. But as they're finishing up, Felicity, who is one of the lineage people, she starts moaning and she drops down, and they
Mm-hmm.
say that she has awakened. And someone is like, this has happened too soon. Um, she's fourth ranked and it's not right. And then Nick is like, what's going on? I demand answers. And Cell is like, you haven't been around enough. And there's like, it's all very strange.
It's all very much like Cell
And
hates Nick because Nick pushed away all of the privilege and blessings he was
I
given. How
know.
dare he?
And then his dad, Nick is like, Dad, what's going on? And the dad's like, don't worry about it. We're in a like very private, we'll talk about it in private. And he's like, no,
Mhm.
tell me now. Uh, but then all of a sudden they hear a growl and
Don't worry, son.
and all of a sudden a hellhound attacks, and she's like, this like I love this because Bree's like, a lot is going on all at once, I cannot do this. um she's kind of like, this is very scary, and she tries to get away, but like she misses when all the pages ran back to safety, because Bree cannot run to safety if her life
Hmm.
depended on it, because her life does depend on it, and yet she
Yes.
still won't do it. And so it like the hellhound ends up like finding her, and it's like, you will help us. And she's like, how will I help you? And then it like attacks her, takes her back, and asks for Nick and says that it wants Nick.
Mhm.
Um, and Nick is like, goes to kind of like step in to try to help Bree, and his dad steps in, stops him from like
It's
getting
like
hurt
it's
too
trying to
much.
grab Bree to take her hostage in order to draw Nick out, and it works.
Yeah.
And so then Nick and his dad come out and they try to save her, and then they all get in a fight, kind of.
Yes. And so like during it, uh the demon like breaks Cell's ankle, it hurts Nick's dad, and like it goes to fight Nick, and Bree runs after it to save Nick. She barrels into the demon just as Cell swings Nick's sword, and they take the hellhound down. And so she's like covered in goop, waiting to see if Nick and his dad are okay. And she like refuses to shower, and everyone's like, you can't really do anything. And she's like, nope, this is really bad, and I need to make sure everyone's okay. But she does take a small little like jaunt with William to learn more
Mhm.
about everything. Because
A
like,
small little jaunt that seemed very long
I
because he gives
know.
her so much information that I needed.
Well, we all needed it, but like also Cell is like still trying to pretty much murder Bree, and they're all like, "Could you
He's
not?"
convinced that all of this is her fault,
I know.
which
Um,
maybe.
I mean, maybe. So there, but like Sarah's like, "Don't worry, you're one of us. You're protected now. Like he can't get to
Hmm.
you." But again, they're all just kind of talking about the and Fitz kind of talks about how people are going to get awakened, including Nick, who is their king, and like they get called in order. So like now that the fourth in line is awakened, like there's only like two more people until you get to
King Arthur.
Nick for Camlin. And she's like, what's Camlin? And they're like, don't worry about it. And Fitz is just freaking out. And this is where William's like, hey, why don't you and I take a nice walk where I tell you about everything that's going on, because Nick didn't tell you.
William's the healer.
Yeah. And William is like, hey, look, Sel is an incredible detective, the most powerful Merlin in a generation. He's really great at handing out a Ukel. Yeah, Ukel. And he's like, well, he's very volatile. And they talk about how, like,
you mean he's an asshole? And I love that moment.
I know, it's so good. And so they kind of talk about like the layout of the house, how it works, how like it's a little bit confusing to me because like, okay, well, like people, when you're awakened, you become part of like the person whose lineage you were from, and you get some of their powers, and it has to go in a certain order. And some of the people from the lower lines get awakened quite often, but the older lines do not get awakened quite often. So there is a little bit of like nepotism that goes into this. And
it's like the older lines, the more important, quote unquote, don't get awakened unless it's a really serious thing.
Right. And like their squires often have like some of their powers to help them, but also it's like going to kill them. And these people
because they're so bonded.
Yeah. And these people get called between like ages 16 and 22. So it's very specific to like very YA ages.
And it like takes an extreme toll on some of their bodies. And there's like this thing called like abatement where they can die really early by like 35 or something.
Right. And they talk about how like the Shadowborn spread across the Americas. So like they built UNC to like train people. So they're the ones who started the college. So old money, old white people stuff. And so
but there's like other groups, I think it's mentioned, right?
Yeah, there are other like orders and chapters. This is just like and like they specifically say Lancelot's group is over in Western. So they talk about like how he has a predilection for healing because of like coming from Gawain, and it's all very like specific. And so it was very big that Felicity got called because that line usually doesn't get called. And we also find out that like Merlin's...
Which I didn't know that. So I don't really know all of the King Arthur stuff. Do you?
I know, I like don't really know pieces, but not a ton of it.
Me too. Where I'm just like, I recognize some of these character names, but like beyond that, like I don't know. Like I don't know like Sir Gawain, like anything that goes on with him. So like when he mentions like, oh yeah, the healing thing is connected, I'm like, oh, is it? Okay.
I remember that he was the Green Knight, and that was like a huge thing, but I forget. He was like honorable, but not. I forget all of them.
Okay. But I don't know any of that.
And then they talk about how like they are all kind of getting reincarnated to fight these big bads. And Camlin is like a huge time written about in the books. That'll be like a very bad thing to fight like under Arthur. And
puts, isn't like, it mentioned like the last time that it happened was the Revolutionary
War? And he's like, well, look, like I don't think I think the war would have happened anyway. It's just like, okay. And so we also find out that Merlins are often like certain Merlin children are selected to be King's Mage, and they take a specific oath. They're taken as children and trained in a formal ceremony to like make sure that they're a sworn protector until death. And she's like, oh, now I kind of feel bad for Sel. And I'm like, I don't, like, I get it. Like, that is very traumatic, but it doesn't give you leave to be terrible to everyone. Like,
it's you and I have talked about this about multiple characters throughout the series that we've covered, where it's like, just because you have a lot of trauma doesn't mean you get to be a terrible human. Like,
but we also find out that like the last King's Mage for Professor Davis was a man named Isaac Klaus Sorensen, and it looks like his name is like on a marble, but it looks like the area around it is like scratched, like it was trying to be pulled out. So she goes back downstairs, and Nick left her, and she's like, Nick left me? And they're all like, yeah, he tried to call you, but everything went to voicemail and her phone is dead. So then Sarah's like, look, I'll just drive you home. He tried to call you a million times. Like, he just had to get home. He probably thought you left. So she drives her back to campus in a Tesla, and and she's like, oh yeah, you get to use these from the order. They have a bunch. And she's like, wow, and Sarah's like, pretentious. And she says she's never going to say it in front of the regents, but like her family, her mom comes from money and she was always a vassal, but her dad doesn't. She's actually biracial, but no one knows, no one seems
She's like,
to
I
understand.
pass as
Yeah.
white, so
And her father's Venezuelan, so now he
Mhm.
is like part of the order as a vassal, and he seems to be like a little bit more into it than their mom is, who kind of like walked away from it or was like, I'm not going to be as involved because like I wanted to marry this man and probably like wouldn't be able to. And she's kind of like, hey, like how do your parents feel about this? And she's like, well, my dad like doesn't, he knows it's all real, but he doesn't because he
Mhm.
doesn't see any of this. um and so they talk about how like her mom didn't really want her to squire unless she was selected by a high rank scion, and since they're like more likely to be called, and she has like a higher chance of dying if that happens. So that's all just kind of going through. And so Sarah goes to take
She also
Sarah.
has like this moment too, which I appreciate, where they kind of have like a bonding moment where she's like, "Look, I deal with a lot of racist shit, and
Yeah,
it's unfortunate." And Bree's like, "How do you handle all of it?" And she's like, "Sometimes I speak up, and other times I just have to deal with it, and
right.
it sucks, and that's what it is."
And so she's going to walk her back to her room when again Sel tries to like get in their way. And Sarah's like, get out of here. And we find out like Ather kind of makes him drunk.
Yeah, he's
And
either
she's like,
drunk, and they're like,
she's like, he like it kind of gets you drunk using that much power. He had to like kill the hellhound and he had already like awakened all this in you guys. So like
Mhm.
it's not great. And so she kind of is like, I'll take care of him. You go back to bed. Um, and so she goes back into the room and Alice is like super worried. She's like, do you know how late it is at first? But then she sees like what Bree looks like, and it looks like she was attacked kind of because she was.
Mhm.
And
She's like, "Oh my
she
gosh, you look like you've been drugged through a bunch of stuff and you're all scratched up and bruised and you smell like a swamp. Are you okay?"
and this is the moment where I'm like, finally, Alice, you start acting like a
Hmm.
reasonable friend. Where like Bree starts crying because she's obviously been through a lot, and Alice is like, did someone hurt you? Do I need to call the
Yeah.
cops? And she's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, and so Alice like goes and helps her clean up. I love this part because Bree gets really frustrated. She has to wash her hair, and she's like, this is
Yeah.
like an hour and a half before I can go to bed.
Yeah.
And
She's
Alice is
like,
like,
"This is gonna take so long." And Alice is like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "I realized I have to wash my hair now." And
and
Alice is
Alice is
like,
like,
"That
damn.
sucks."
um, And so they both apologize to each other about everything that's happening. And like Alice does like accept her responsibility for what happened in the quarry. And Bree kind of accepts, like, I know that I haven't been myself and I am sorry. And so Alice is like, can you just try to trust me? And she's like, I definitely want to, but like, and
She's kind
she's
of like,
like,
"This thing is bigger than both of us, and I don't even know how to start involving you in this."
but Alice is like, fine. And so she leaves at that moment. And then all of a sudden, Bree's skin bursts into red flames.
Yeah,
And
she's having a really emotional moment in the shower here where she's like starting to kind of break down
Mhm.
with all that's happening, and then these flames start coming off of her and she's like, "Oh my gosh, what now? Like what am I supposed to do about this? Like this is another secret that I'm gonna have to keep because this is not a good sign. Like what does this even mean?"
And it's noted that it's red and it's not silver blue like cells or Legendborns
Mhm.
or green like a hound's, but it's like vibrant red. And so
Mhm.
she starts whimpering. She's really scared. She doesn't know what's going on. Um, and then she wakes up the next day. She doesn't feel like herself. And she finds out like her dad calls and he's like, what happened? Like Alice called me last night, said you were out like way too late. Like, what's going on with you? Do I need to bring you home? Like, I told you that I would bring you home if I felt like this was too much, and I think it's time. And she's like, no, it's not, I promise. Like, and then she tells him that she got accepted into a secret society.
Mhm.
um and Alice is like, oh, you did? And she's like, yeah, and then we find out that her dad enrolled her in therapy, which I'm like, good for dad, but also like
Yeah.
breakneck speed. Like it's been 3 days or like 5 days, maybe. Um, and
But it's
so
also one of those things that maybe not just these 3 days, but he's seeing all these things happening and knowing everything that's happened over the past 3 months is like, okay, I think there's a lot going on. I think she needs to be in therapy. So even
right,
though for us as readers, we're like, it's a lot to put your kid in therapy after just 3 days. It's like, it's been a few months and
right.
he's
The therapy
take care
isn't
of
a
his
shocking. It's more like it's
daughter.
been 5 days and like she already has a mentor and a therapist. And it's just like a lot of
Yeah.
stuff where I'm
It
like, this
seems like
is
a lot of
all
stuff just because it seems like causal because of the things going on at campus. But I think for the therapy with her, just her dad,
right.
it's
Yeah,
because
that
of
one is fine. But
everything.
she gets her phone. It has like a ton of texts in it. Nick asks her to stop doing this to like get her out, and he'll find out what happened to her mother. And she's like, I'm not quitting. And he's like, well, I thought you
Mhm.
might say that. So like dinner's at 6 tonight. And it's like, okay, Nick. So
Yeah,
quick.
again, he's just like, okay, don't do this anymore. Like, this is your out. And then he immediately respects her decision to stay
Right.
involved.
We also do find out that her therapist does know her mother, like they were in school
Yeah.
together. And
And
so,
her therapist is a black woman. Her dad
yes.
specifically selected a black woman to be her therapist.
And so they kind of go in. She goes to the arboretum where the therapist asked to meet her
Mhm.
at 2 after like a class where she's like, this was kind of a slacker class. That's my bad. And she
Yeah.
meets Dr. Patricia Hartwood. Um, and they're like in this beautiful arboretum. It's really nice. It reminds like, she's like, my mom would love this. And they're at this like slab where she sees like mage flame billowing in warm clouds, but then there are
Mhm.
figurines down below, and she realizes that they're all black people. And Dr. Patricia is like, yeah, they're the unsung founders memorial to like pay homage to the enslaved and the servants who built this place. And she's
Yeah,
like,
because she said something like, it makes me sad to be here, even though this is a neat place. I still like feel the sadness of it all.
and she also like she points out something where she's like, yeah, this is like it was a class gift, and like thank you for recognizing it, but you still made the people work
Hmm.
in the display. And she's like, that's a really big bummer. Like it's hard
Yeah.
to recognize that.
Because I think it's mentioned that they're like depicted as like Atlas holding up the world almost.
Yeah. And so they kind of talk about like the start of school, everything that happened with her mother. And she's like, I didn't know your mom well, but like I know that I didn't even know she passed. So
Hmm. But
um
has heard of her and
yeah.
everything.
And so she's just kind of talking to her, and she goes like, I'd like to talk about your mother. And they're talking, and she goes, she's like, do you want to know why I asked to meet you here? And she's like, no, not really. Is that like a trick question? And she goes, these gardens are abundant with root energy. Are you not a wildcrafter like your mother? And we're gonna leave it there on a
Yay!
cliffhanger. I am really vibing with this book. I think
Oh,
it's
I
a
love
ton
it.
of fun. It's so good. It's a breath of fresh air to have like a ton of plot in
Hmm.
160 pages where like we've come so far in
Yeah,
a
a lot
third
has
of the book.
happened.
I know. So I know that I was like, oh no, we're breaking this book up into thirds. Like it is a breakneck speed, but it's also like
Hmm.
it's a thick 160 pages to get
Yeah,
to a third of
because
this
this is a
book.
long book. It's like 500 pages.
Exactly. So I'm glad we're stopping here because it also brought us to a perfect cliffhanger of
Yes.
what does
Well,
that
because we're just
mean?
introduced to Dr. Patricia
I know.
and figuring out what's
And
going on here.
I don't want to do another exposition dump tonight. So.
That's very fair.
But I'm really glad Laura brought this to the podcast, guys. I can't
I
wait
mean,
to
I
read more.
I didn't necessarily bring it to the podcast. I just we wanted to buddy read it, and
Yeah.
I'm glad we're finally buddy reading it with some accountability here.
With some accountability. All right. Well, guys, make sure that you are following along. Make sure you're reading the next third of the book. So through page or chapter 36, I believe. Will be next week's. And also, please make sure you're rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the podcast. You can rate episodes on Spotify. Please get us those ratings because they do
Yay.
help. Or tell a friend to listen to the
Yeah,
podcast. Like,
sure.
this is a fun book series. It's a fun way to get in. And
Mhm.
Laura and I will try to keep it a little bit more respectable because I'm like, oh, I had a moment where I was like, do you think high schoolers will listen to this to not have to read the book? I was
Oh,
like, maybe
oh
we should
no.
watch our
I
language.
I hope that's not the situation. Because
Guys
I
can
think
read the
that this
book,
is a
but
great book for high schoolers to
I
read.
know. So make sure you are reading the book. Don't just listen to us. And honestly, by the time we get through all of our chatting and the plot breakdown, like you might as well have read the book.
Yeah,
So make sure you're
we're
going to
way
do
less
that.
interesting than actually reading this
I
very well written book.
Yeah. And join us on Patreon. You can be a subscriber for $1, $3, $5, and $10 a month.
Mhm.
Go see what we're doing there because it's a bunch of fun
Join our
stuff.
Discord.
Join our Discord. We're very active there. I think it's like where we go more often now than Twitter,
Yeah.
because Twitter is a hellscape. And, you can follow us on Instagram, OWWR Pod, on all the things. Medias. So make sure you're doing that. And join us next week as we do a deep dive into the second third. Of
it's
Tracy
4 parts,
Deonn's...
but we broke it up into thirds to cover it.
Yes, we did. And join us next week. Bye.
Bye.